Respected Professor Dr. Meera Desai, keynote speaker for today's session, Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School and Director of Studios and Production at Delhi Metropolitan Education, Professor Dr. Susmita Bala, Head DME Media School, my colleagues and dear students, I am Manmeet Kaur extended my warm welcome to the second day of session program being organized by DME Media School. The objective behind to organize this 5-day session orientation program is to make students familiar with various facets of mass communication. DME Media School is a branch of Delhi Metropolitan Education, which is a A-grade premier education institution affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University. The college offers BBA, BBA, BLB, with BA value education to its students by providing proper training to enhance their skills. This education and training enables them in taking up the industry and creating a space for themselves with their competence and vigor. Faculty members as well as the students through Academy Media School has successfully organized 3 international conferences in collaboration with various prestigious organizations like Deccan University, Melbourne, Australia, Society of India, the Delhi chapter, in March 2018, in November 2018, and 10 days world's first live digital conference in June 2020, respectively. DME Media School had also organized International Film Festival in April 2019. We have international conferences under the theme of India Cinema and Alternate Networks I Can Do, and issues of community agenda and news took place in June 2020. Large participation of delegates and experts from different parts of the world. In addition, every month with eminent media stalwarts and personalities, and students, they got a chance to interact with these media stalwarts. We also undertake the Media Fest under the name of Ritika. Owing to the disruptions caused by COVID-19, DME Media School adapted to the change and leveraged technology to impart quality education to students. Video lectures and in-depth notes were also shared with the students in the previous semesters. Going forward for the upcoming sessions, we have adopted a pedagogy which is more in tune with the contemporary times, keeping in mind the safety of the students, and we will be sharing and uploading the video lectures on Kolpol, the ERP of Delhi Metropolitan Education, and also digital learning platforms in the form of tutorial lectures and lab lectures. Apart from curricular activities, we also organized this webinar series which discussed about the impact of COVID-19 on various industries, and we recently conducted our Media Master web series wherein we familiarized media aspirants with different fields of mass communication. Yesterday, we have also started our student-centric chat show under the name of Face to Face. I think we should all have a glimpse of digital campus of DME.
DME has embraced digital paradigm shift by adopting technology-based learning.
Unlike other colleges, we adopted a 2-step strategy. In step 1, teachers would be preparing the videos, students would be watching them. In step 2, the student would be coming to the tutorial, clarifying the doubts, making the presentations, and discuss with the teacher.
At DME, we have invested in the best in the class academic ERP, which allows us to have a 360-degree robust communication amongst all the stakeholders, students and faculty members.
DME's virtual learning mechanism is no less than real-time classroom teaching,
wherein the students are provided the pool of e-learning resources in the form of PPTs, video lectures, and online classes in a very student-friendly environment.
There is no need of mental blocks. Online teaching is as effective and interesting as offline teaching. Let the students enjoy this new mode of education.
In DME, we believe in quality education. We take care of our students. We want to see them happy.
Mental and emotional health are one of the most challenging issues of present times. DME Mentoring Cell takes care of that. Not just this, we go beyond academic curriculum to instill the most important employability skills in our students.
I would like to introduce the keynote speaker for today's session. Professor Dr. Meera Desai is an associate professor in communication technology and in charge head at the University Department of Extension Education, SNDT Women's University, Mumbai since July 1998 as a full-time professor. Before that, ma'am has started her professional career as a social researcher with DECU ISRO and eventually worked at EMRC Ahmedabad and Mahila Samakhya, Gujarat. Qualifications in commerce, development communication, distance education, extension education, participatory research, women's study, and gender. She has worked for print media reporting for TOI Ahmedabad, television production, researcher, scriptwriter, and anchor, internet blogger as well as content provider, and alternate media newsletter editor and documentary filmmaker. Environments besides field experience in rural women's empowerment program before entering into full-time academics. She has presented papers at number of AMIC and IAM CR conferences and has number of publications to her credits, including 5 books and Government of India recognition for her book manuscript for new literates besides research publications, book chapters, and popular articles. Her areas of interest are audience reception, Indian television, research methodology, women's study, gender studies and development, and sociology of technology. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us today. Professor Dr. Amrish Saxena, Dean DME Media School and Director of DME Studios and Production, an accomplished media professional, researcher, author, anchor, and political analyst. He has worked at different media platforms ranging from theater, puppetry, print, radio, television, films, and digital before switching over to media academics and research. Dr. Saxena has played long innings in active journalism, having association with the groups like The Pioneer and Amrit Bazar Patrika during 1980s. He has worked as a correspondent for the first ever TV Hindi news magazine Parak on Doordarshan during 1990s. He has been anchoring the highly rated program for AIR FM Gold Market Mantra for close to 2 decades. Dr. Saxena has academic association with more than 20 universities, which include 4 central universities, 5 state and 9 private or deemed universities. He has 30 books to his credit as a sole author, main author, chapter writer, and editor. He has presented more than 60 research papers in national and international seminars and conferences. Dr. Saxena has extensive international exposure. He has visited China, Australia, United States, Dubai, Egypt, Spain, and France as the part of his academic endeavors. He is a member of International SOER. In 2019, he made a presentation on innovation in journalism education as a sole representative of Asia in World Journalism Education Conference in Paris. I would request you to please acknowledge the gathering. Thank you, sir, for joining the session today. I also request Professor Dr. Saxena to please address the gathering and formally welcome our guest today.
Thank you, Manmeet. Thank you, Pramod. I welcome Professor Meera Desai in this session. Obviously, we started this orientation week yesterday, but then we were eagerly waiting for this session, and Professor Desai was kind enough to agree to come to this session despite the fact that she has her own engagements in her university in Mumbai. But then she is always for the students, and that is how she agreed to talk to the students and to deliver whatever knowledge she can to the benefit of the students, because we conceived this whole orientation program in a manner wherein whatever subjects are to be taught, we have a semester system, so whatever subjects are to be taught in the third semester and the fifth semester, in each of the subject, we have invited one very distinguished person to talk on that particular subject. And the whole idea is that a strong foundation is laid at the outset, and thereafter the teachers concerned will take it forward. And as we all know that in the wake of this COVID-19, the new batch admissions are yet to begin, and possibly that session may start in September or October. But then we decided, and the university also wanted to see to this, that the session of the existing batches start. So that is how the second year and third year session we have started, and we have started much ahead than what was prescribed by the university, because we did not want to lose time. We made all our preparations, we sacrificed all our summer vacation and everything, and we prepared all the lectures which were desired. So in every paper, the teacher concerned, the subject teacher, is approximately preparing 40 lectures, and those video lectures are to be put in the ERP system of DME, which is Colpol. So the students will get an opportunity to go through those lectures, and then some tutorial lectures will be happening, which will be online. And whatever queries are there, doubts are there in the minds of the students, all those will be addressed by the teachers. And then beyond that, we will be having online practical classes, lab classes, because in journalism and mass communication, practicals and labs are equally important. So all that we will be doing. So it will be a very hectic schedule from morning till evening. And beyond that, the recording of the lectures, and then giving assignment, checking of the assignment. So teachers are busy round the clock to the advantage of the students. And that is what we have been asking the student, that whatever disadvantages are there of this COVID-19, but it has also provided us certain opportunities. So let us make use of those opportunities, because we have now learned a lot of new things. The students are also desired to learn new things. So there's a completely new mode of education. Earlier also we were using this all, but in a very limited sense, because more or less our teaching was the offline. But now, since everything is online, so we have to change our system that way completely. So once again, I welcome Professor Meera Desai in this session, and I believe that we all will enjoy her session, and the teachers and the taught, everybody will be benefited alike. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. Do you want me to begin, or you have
Manmeet will tell
Just a small announcement, ma'am. Just a small announcement.
Yeah, please. That's
Yeah,
why I asked.
Yes, ma'am. Before we start the session, I would request everyone to please keep audio muted, and request you to please write your questions in the chat box. I and Mr. Pramod Kumar Pandey, Assistant Professor at DME Media School, will be taking up the questions on your behalf. And now we are looking for an insightful session. The topic of discussion is to request Pramod sir to please take over the session for further discussion. Over to you, Pramod sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I would like to thank Meera ma'am for sparing time. And while I was going through her profile on various platforms, I came across, such a vibrant, such a dynamic profile on Google Scholar. I just kept on scrolling and found so many research papers in journals of, national and international repute, and the platforms where all you have presented the papers. I think it's a matter of a great honor for us to have you, and it's a great opportunity for all the students to, learn so much from you. I mean, we had an internal orientation session on the same subject with the students just a few hours back, and I told them about you. And I think this is the time when students, should come up with, questions that you may be having after that initial discussion, and I'm sure you'll be benefited by it. So, ma'am, from here, I think you can take the session forward now.
Thank you so much. So first of all, formally, thank you, Saxena sir and Pandeyji, for all the support. What I intend to talk about is talk about media research. Just for a kind of a trivia, I completed 30 years as researcher this year. So I started in 1990, and 2020 I complete 30 years as a researcher. So that experience has taught me few things about research, which I'm here to share with you. I hope and assume that you all had lunch and your teachers must have told you to sit here. So I hope and look forward that you will have some interesting and exciting questions to ask me. The presentation that I have, which Pandey sir will show, is also there on a slide share. So I am just kind of a disclaimer by saying that I am a copy left person. So I believe that by sharing, we learn more. So this presentation that you're going to see now is already there on a slide share with a DME credit, because I work in this area for a long time, and it takes time to kind of sit together and put things together in a particular structure. Also that I'm talking to, I usually have never taught undergraduate students. So I consider that as one of the limitations, because I started my career as a postgraduate teacher directly. And after 20 years of postgraduate teaching, I've realized that undergraduate teaching is not what postgraduate teaching is. So with that disclaimer, I would request Pandey. I have these people keep calling up. That's kind of one limitation of online. So I would start with this very interesting blog, which you can visit also. And I give the picture credit to her because I took that picture from there. And I found it very interesting because as communication students, you would have for sure learnt about smoke signals as the beginning of communication. And now we do Wi-Fi, by which we are also connected right now. So, so she is the kind of very interesting, she has a very interesting content on her website, and it is in Caribbean islands, and you can go and visit that. But I found that very interesting by saying that it's just an upgraded version that we are all in, but communication does not change because communication remains what it is. So then when we talk about research, we have to recognize that research also remains what it is. So what I intend to talk about is to talk about media research, and what I would cover is to talk about what is media research predominantly and why do we do that. I'm not making this a very academic monologue kind of a presentation. So I want you to recognize that I'm talking based on my own experiences, as I said, over a period of time. I would request Pandeyji to change the slide if you can. Next, and then you can do the next. That's just my location. Just for kind of some of you who may not be aware, we are a 104-year-old women's university in the country. We are the first in India, and we are kind of into women's education and empowerment. So what I'm talking about is communication. You all must have been talking about it for last 2 years of your studies as a student, and you are aware of what communication is. I'm sure you are aware of communication as an exchange, as a transaction, as a transmission. What I want you to pay attention to is that communication also is an ideology. When I'm saying that, I'm saying it in the context that when we are talking like this right now, we are assuming that everybody is connected. We are assuming that all of us have access to Wi-Fi. The reality is also communication, where there are a lot of people in this country, in this world, who are not connected. So when we talk about any communication processes or any communication products for that matter, communication is a lot more than only an exchange. It is also about reaching out to people. It's also about understanding the requirements and needs. It's also about recognizing the needs, recognizing the problems, recognizing what the people are facing. So please start kind of exploring your horizons in the way you look at communication itself. Because when we talk about media, which is the kind of a next slide, by saying when we look at media, what is media? Media is not merely a vehicle of advertising. Like what you just now saw a little while ago is a presentation on a DME school. Now that's a vehicle by which DME is reaching out to a lot of people. And why are they doing it? Because they're branding themselves. But media also, you need to recognize, is that media is lot more than only a vehicle. Media is also a lot of money. Media is an institution. Media is capital. Media also is again ideology, because the moment you and I do a folk theater or a street play, we recognize that we don't need any other devices to reach out. But if we are doing it through mobile or we are doing it through Wi-Fi, we are assuming that people are connected. So media also, as we all recognize, is kind of a reality. There is also a representation that media creates. Like a lot of times we all are aware of no means no, or what do we want women in this world to do. So we are all kind of recognizing all such kind of representations through media. Also, we need to realize that each media has its own historical context. So actually India is like a globe. So if you are kind of in India, you have to realize that you are exposed to variety of people and variety of places, and therefore you are kind of exposed to the globe. Now, since I'm talking about research, I want you to pay attention to the fact that what is science? Because a lot of times, a lot of us look at science as something that is in laboratories, that is about lab coats, and that's about experiments. But you also have to recognize that we are part of science as the kind of students of media and communication. As a student actually of an undergraduate program or postgraduate programs that some of you will opt for, what is science and what does science do? So what science does? Science gives you an explanation. Science gives you exploration. Science is about understanding evidences, because a lot of times we say that do you have evidence about that? Now, what evidence? What kind of explanation? So fundamentally, we talk about three aspects. One is nature, which we are all kind of product of at some stage. Then we talk about individuals as a human beings, and then we talk about relationship of human beings, nature, and the third most important constituent of society. So when a nature, like why is sun or why is moon kind of coming in the night, that's the kind of a nature. Now when you say why do I feel like this, that's human. But why is society behaving in a particular way? So that's a kind of a society. So when we talk about science, what we are trying to do is we are giving an understanding of or revelation about relationship of these three factors. Now, all the sciences that we are aware of are built on this understanding of how nature, human, and society are intersecting, or what are their relationships. Now, when you say that, okay, but so what? Like, how does it impact media and communication? So you have to realize that when we talk about process of science, science doesn't fall from the sky, right? Because like there is a long history, long trajectory. Human societies have been researching or kind of exploring. There have been deaths, like people, somebody said earth is round and the person will get killed because everybody else is not agreeing to what that person was saying. So the process of science is built on the idea that there is a knowledge or there is a research. Somebody has kind of found that Galileo said something, or Aristotle said something, or our own Chanakya wrote about something. So there is a research which is based on the evidences or experiences of an individual. Now that builds up a new knowledge, which a lot of times questions the older knowledge. And in the process, what gets formed is a science, because science doesn't come from the kind of no explanation. Science is built up based on the understanding of a reality by whosoever reality it is. Like if you are a student who has been traveling by Delhi Metro, or you are a student who has been by DTC buses, and somebody tells you that no, who's saying that there is a harassment of women? You have experienced it firsthand, so you have that knowledge, you have that experience, which you can't, that somebody else may not have that experience. So somebody else will not never research about that, because that somebody else has never kind of looked at it. So to go to the next level of relationship between research, knowledge, and science, you have to recognize that research is a systematic and scientific procedure to draw conclusions. What are you doing with research? You are actually drawing conclusions. Now, what kind of conclusions you want to draw depends on what you are researching, because research contributes to knowledge, contributes to branch of knowledge, and contributes to science. So next, yeah. So when we talk about knowledge, the knowledge is kind of provides you a verifiable evidence, and it's not a Google surfing, because a lot of us, like I hear this word a lot of times. My students tell me that I did research. So I find that very amusing, because not to kind of eliminate that idea that you are not, but I said फिर हम लोग 30 साल से क्या कर रहे हैं? अगर आप वो कह रहे हो कि खाली गूगल करने से रिसर्च कर लिया, तो वो रिसर्च क्यों नहीं है? तो रिसर्च में क्या डिफरेंस है in that sense? So if we kind of go back and look at research as a process and procedure, which is not merely about compiling information. So that's something that one needs to recognize, that I'm not saying that Googling does not give you any ideas. Like, why would Dr. Pandey said that he had Googled my profile. So what are we now doing? Because you know people by kind of looking at their online lives, online materials. So research helps you recognize, understand, but Googling is just one of the process or one of the step of research that we need to recognize. Now, what is science then? Science is fundamentally, as we all are kind of, you would have for sure done it in your first year, that communication means common and commonness and community. The same way science means knowledge. So the Latin verb of science means knowledge. So knowledge and science are same. You will say, oh, if they're same, then what is research? So research is something that builds up knowledge. So that's a kind of a connectivity. Now, the research does not change globally. The research steps does not change globally. Research steps don't change across disciplines. That's kind of another thing that you have to recognize, that as a media and communication scholar or as a student, what you do is the same thing that somebody in nutrition, somebody in health, somebody in psychology has to do. The only difference is that the content of what they do is kind of going to be different. So to understand research process, the steps in research process are there on the screen. So you can kind of realize that fundamentally what you are doing actually is that you're formulating a problem. Now you will say, what is a problem? Problem is anything that you are interested in researching. So that can be as simple as, just to kind of give you an example, when I was growing up, my grandfather wanted to watch television, and my brother, who was in a 10th standard, had a kind of was not studying, because I'm talking about a time when the cricket matches used to run for a whole day, and he would keep the TV set on, and my brother would not study. So my mother would get into a kind of conflict, and that led me to kind of decide and research elderly people and television. And it's very interesting, because after 20 years, the same research was undertaken by one of my students, and we go in Mumbai with multiple channels, and we had a very interesting comparative data talking about how Indian elderly and television are interconnected. What is the shift that is happening? Now, one of the very important things that you need to recognize and understand in research is this business of review of literature. Now, what is literature or review? Is fundamentally what we talked about earlier, is this whole notion of knowledge, because the knowledge is built up contextually. If you are in science, and which particular science that you're talking about, your knowledge comes from that particular literature. So if you say I'm a media and communication student, then you go back and look at literature in media and communication. What is happening is that a lot of times what we do is we go and Google. Now what you get in Google is not contextual. It is very, very generic. So that's the kind of a concept that one needs to realize as a student, that what am I looking for? Do I recognize what I'm looking for? Once you've seen what others have researched, how they have researched, what they found, You decide what you yourself wants to research, and then you decide how will you go about researching it. So fundamentally, when we do research, we make decisions about what are we researching, with whom will we collect the data. So that's our sample, because then you want to recognize that, oh, I'm interested in children, I'm interested in women, I'm interested in elderly, as the example that I gave you. So once you decide the sample, you have to decide how will you collect that data. So that talks about data collection tools, because then you have to decide if questionnaire will make sense, or I'll have to interview them. Or can I send a Google form? Like we say, all of my students want to only do Google form. And last year we kind of made a rule in the university that the Google form data will not be considered as a valid data. Now you will say, what is the reason, ma'am? The fact is that when you are not collecting data yourself, you're not associated and connected to your own data of knowledge that you are generating, because it's not about Google form, it's about generating new knowledge. So Google form itself makes graphs. So you put those graphs and you feel that you have done research. Now that's not research, because when you are saying I'm analyzing my data, you have looked at the previous literature. You've looked at a review of literature, you've looked at a previous knowledge, you have generated your own knowledge by the process of research, and then you are kind of drawing interpretations and conclusions. And any research that we all do, we have to write reports. Now these reports can be books, that those reports can be journal papers, that those reports can be anything that can be in outcome format. I can even do a presentation in a conference for a research that I have undertaken. So that also becomes my report, because my report is also communication that I do with myself and with the others. So it's a process of communication. So if we kind of go and just go kind of little backwards and understand what are the kind of branches of knowledge or science that we talk about, and where are we located as communication and media scholars, that broadly the sciences can be categorized in kind of 4 categories. It is natural sciences, it's social sciences, it's applied sciences, and then we talk about the fourth thing called humanities, that we all are aware of by saying that literature and arts and all that. Now, when I'm kind of saying, why am I talking about this, is that I want you to recognize that as a communication and media students, you are actually located in last 3, because communication is also applied science. When Saxena sir has to produce a program, he has to do research, and that research is an applied research. As a social scientist, we try and understand are children getting impacted by violence on television. That's kind of a sociology as well as psychology. So communication is conceptually called a behavioral science. So as a behavioral science, we are borrowing from all other sciences. And just for you to recognize that when we talk about the categorization of knowledge, what I have kind of brought in is the library classification. I don't know how many of you go to the physical libraries anymore, because we all depend on Google Scholar and Google. But here is a library classification of knowledge. Now you will say, what has library to do with knowledge? You have to realize that library is called library and information sciences. So they categorize knowledge into this 10 broad categories. This is one of the classification. There are other 2 also, which librarians can tell you. But let me tell you that the best thing to learn about any topic is go to a librarian, a physical librarian, and talk to them. And trust me that you get huge body of help, which no Google can help you. So human beings are still important and relevant. You need to recognize that. And librarians can guide you. So as a researcher, a lot of times I have got help from the librarians in my university who have given me a lot of material. So you should recognize that whatever you're researching, where does that fall? Like just to kind of continue my example of old people, I'll tell you that when I started exploring television and old people, I said, oh, there is no material. Then I came to know through the process of review that there is a field called gerontology. And gerontology is about science of elderly. And within that, there is a science of leisurely studies. So what do old people do in leisure? And that's where television was located. So a lot of times we don't kind of realize that the kind of uh, knowledge that I am looking for can be located somewhere else. Now, I just have this one example. I'm actually studying right now a course on Coursera called Introduction to Psychology, because I never did psychology as a student. So, so what I kind of learned, and which is very interesting, is that, and for those who are kind of not explored that, is that psychology is about 300-year-old science, about 400-year-old science, and the trajectory of psychology starts in 1600s, as you see, and there is a kind of a list that you can just go on and just show that by saying this is the trajectory of only American psychology that the psychology programs across the world talk about. Now, if you see why I'm bringing this here, is that I want you to realize that a discipline takes a long time to build up, like 400 years for American psychology to establish itself as a professional association, and also to kind of take it further. And now we all talk about psychology as if like something that we all are aware of. Communication is very, very young. Like the initial work of communication that we all talk about is Marshall McLuhan in 1957, and after that. So very young discipline. As a discipline, we are not even 100. It's a kind of a discipline. As you kind of see, the culture comes from anthropology. Politics, sociology, and psychology, as I said. So communication research is not a pure discipline. It's a kind of a combined discipline. Now, the next is about, which you would have heard 100 times in your class, I'm sure, about this whole business of media and entertainment industry. Now, you have to recognize that research is not only pure theoretical discipline. Research is an applied discipline also. Research is applied because you want answers. You're looking for kind of solutions to problems. Like we had, some of you might not be aware, but we had a blue Pepsi, and then it did not work because people did not accept it, and the product had to be withdrawn. So somebody who kind of started a product did not think about asking audiences. And there's a very interesting insight that some people said it is like a gaslit. Now, nobody would have thought about it, that Pepsi and gaslit can be equated. In reality, they do the same thing, but still. So when we look at a media and entertainment industry, you have all these sectors that you are kind of aware of, and which kind of talks about communication. And in each of these areas, there is a research. So it's not that research happens somewhere else. The research is a part of a process of kind of communication, to write a book, to create a newspaper, even to kind of understand the OTT behavior, OTT audience behavior by doing data analytics, because your data is now generated on its own. Like when you are here and your teacher is asking you to write your names in the chat box, they still don't have that technology where they can track you so closely that your number and your name can be matched. Otherwise, there will come a stage where we'll not even need that. We'll have AI coming into classrooms where you will be swiping your cards, and then, as we all know, as smart human beings, we'll give our cards to our friends and we'll never come to the class. So that's kind of another possibility. Anyway, so so just coming to the kind of sectors, if you see the media sector classifications on your screen, then we are talking about diversity of sectors, which is kind of extension to what we talked about earlier in terms of the industry. All these sectors demand research, and as simple as beauty trends in Hollywood to beauty trends in Bollywood to everything else that. So these are all the kind of job avenues that all of you have once you're out in a kind of, since you're all final year students, and if you don't study further, you have options in all these areas. And all these areas are also possibilities and options for you to undertake research. Now, when we talk about media research and how does one go about doing it, uh, there are a variety of classifications that you can kind of use. First one that I use is typically based on a stage of production. So, when are you doing this research? Like, I have a communication to do. So, when I kind of when Saxena sir asked me, will you talk? I asked him, okay, Panditji, this is something that I already talked about. So you can go to the next one. Yeah, these are the options as I told them that they have. I was asking Saxena sir, who is the audience? So he told me our TY students. So I have done my pre-production research. I did not have this PPT made, so I made this PPT for you because the PPT that I have is kind of pretty loaded. It has lot of conceptual words and it has lot of ideology and verbose things which I can explain if I'm in a class, but I'm not in a class. So I have a kind of little disagreement when people say that online and offline is same, because I am not too sure. I don't agree with that idea. Anyway, that's my opinion. So if you talk about a pre-production research, you are a filmmaker, you are an advertiser, you want to kind of write a book. So you will do some research before you start your work. So that's called pre-production research. It's also called formative research for understanding who is the audience, why are we doing this, what will be the objectives, what do we want to achieve, how long am I supposed to talk. Then there is something called process research. Process research is when something is going on. So right now, your teachers are kind of looking at your chat box. Somebody is monitoring Facebook. So we're trying to see what is happening right now. Like somebody will kind of try and present in the middle. Like today morning, we had a Google Meet presentation and somebody walked in and started presenting. And we had to remove her from the platform. And in the process of doing that, we lost our speaker also. So we actually had to tell our speaker to come back and present again. So that's the kind of a challenge that we all have when communication is in process. Like I am in a classroom, I can look at people and tell them not to yawn at least, but that doesn't happen in digital. So that's the kind of a process. And there is something called summative research. Summative research is a research that you undertake after the communication is over, just to understand the feedback, to recognize whether it went well or not, was it effective, did it make sense or not. And most important thing that you have to recognize is that the summative for right now can become formative for the next one, because what you have learned can be used for the next one when you are communicating again. So it's a cycle that you undertake in a media research, where a lot of production houses invest in research now because they have recognized that the audience behavior is important. Now the audiences are becoming more important than what they were earlier, because earlier we had a one-way communication. Now we are increasingly talking about 2NS. The other way of categorizing media research is by the method of research. Now this method of research remains static for any research. So I can take up case studies in psychology, I can take up case studies in media research, I can take up Zee television as a case study, or I can look at Zee as a media conglomerate in an Indian context, and what do they do. Or I can look at Netflix India operation, and probably I can kind of try and create some survey around it to ask Netflix Indian audiences to understand whether they like the content or not. Like this year, one of our students did a research on OTT platforms, and it's very interesting because majority of the audiences are watching OTT on their mobiles, and a lot of them very clearly said that they consume the sex and violence that comes on OTT platforms, and they are loving it. So they are not kind of they're not going there just like that. They are kind of going for it in that sense. So these are some of the methods of research that we can take it up. With the new media and with the digital platforms, now we have something called sentiment analysis or network analysis, where we can, without asking anybody, we can actually go back and track the data and create a kind of a finding about what do people do when they are online? Where do they go? Or what is happening to Sushant Singh Rajput's murder case? So what kind of sentiment is on a Twitter? So I can take up a kind of a nodal Excel analysis and understand the public opinion around a particular case. So there are variety of methods that you can take up. So a lot of what you will do, I'm sure, in the next 1 year in your media research class is to talk about some of these methods, because methods are important to understand. I also tell this to people who undertake research is to read about that method, because each method has its own benefits and its own limitations. So if you're doing surveys, surveys don't give you depth. Case studies give you depth, but it doesn't give you a spread. So a lot of times the decisions that you make in research is to go in the depth, or go like breadth and depth of the matter need to be kind of explored, because that is something that you have to recognize. Another classification that I talk about in media research is classification in terms of creation. Like I am creating the communication. So there can be research with reference to communicators. Like I give you an example of Zee TV. So Zee is a very interesting example of what we call counterflows, because there's a lot of research in the area of what we call cultural imperialism. There was a lot of fear about the way people will consume media, and the American media will kind of convert all of us. Like I'm talking about way back in 1999, 2000, 20 years back, there was a fear that American media will take over. And a lot of research that happened around that area were related to the idea that media is going to kind of make all Indians American. And what has happened 20 years down the line? We have made ESPN and we had made Star TV talk in our language. So now they talk our language. Now one can debate whether they talk our language in all other areas. Is the language only Hindi, but the values are American? That's kind of another area of research by itself. But the fact is that your McDonald's became Aloo Tikki and your Pizza Hut became Paneer Pizza. So the entire counterflow, or we call globalization, so all this is the shift that has taken place in the kind of a media process. And that media process can be explored by looking at what we can look at is by saying, what are the creation processes? What is getting created? One very important concept in media research is political economy. How the power, the funding, and the power and the vested interest are intersected. And is it questioning the status quo in the society? What is happening in terms of the way media is created? Who is supporting that kind of a creation? We also have now, however, concepts like crowdfunding. We also have concepts like what we call participatory media. So all those media processes can be explored by looking at creation. The next level in media is this whole business of distribution. How is it being distributed? Who is kind of distributing it? Like your old cable wala has now gone. You are directly doing DTH. So the middleman has kind of gone. Directly you are linking with your broadcaster. So what kind of distribution patterns, shifts have taken place in any given media? What is happening with OTT? So why is like OTT the way it is? Like I'll just give you one simple personal example that the Netflix takes your credit card details when you are registering online. And in my own family twice, the card was hacked. So my husband is now fighting with Netflix for saying that you take a weekly subscription, you take a yearly subscription, because I don't want to give my credit card details. And Netflix doesn't have the policy of distributing OTT like that. So they're losing the audience. They actually, people like my husband are not going to be audience with Netflix. So the distribution is becoming more and more centric. Like we have television channels who also have distribution platforms. So there is a shift that is happening in distribution, which is very interesting and important to be explored. And then the third one is what we call consumption or a reception or audiences. Like right now you are listening to me. Why are you listening to me? Is it necessary for you to listen to me? There's another concept of cultural studies that we talk about, which intersects actually creation, distribution, and consumption. So how are people being consuming the content and what is happening to audiences. So in media research, you can explore all three of these areas, because that will kind of help you understand what. So it's not that you do everything. As a researcher, you decide which one you're interested in, you take up that one, go into the more details of it, try and see what others have done, and then design your own study. So that's what one usually does. Okay, so just to kind of a question by saying, because one of the things that I said, what and why. So why do we do media research? Like one of the question is, and typically, if you kind of go for your master's program, as a student, you do research because you want a degree. Some of them say, no, 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 I want to have knowledge. I have some people who say, I want to have doctor in front of my name, therefore I'm doing research. So it's not the research, but it's because for that doctor that you do that. Then you have communicators. They take up research for policy making. They want to make decisions. They are creating a communication. So they take up research for deciding their stories, deciding their characters. They want to understand the audiences, so they do that for that. Then they also want to have solutions. Then you have advertisers who kind of do research for advertising, for selling products. And then you also have marketeers who want to optimize their products. And researchers, a lot of times, take it up because they want to, researchers want to kind of understand and predict something. Because fundamentally, if I go back to what I told you earlier, is that we do research because we want to predict something, or we want to kind of understand something more sharply. So the science helps you predict. Like in Bombay, we have a very heavy rain today. There was a prediction. It's a red alert. And as we all have kind of, Indians have that tendency to say that IMD is never accurate. So today somebody said that, oh, IMD is accurate today because the red alert is actually red alert. So there is a kind of prediction of meteorology department that has proved true today. So there is a kind of heavy rain today. Now, just to kind of come to my personal thing about why do I research? Why did I do research? Why I'm talking about this is that I want you to recognize that research can be a very interesting area of exploration for you as an individual. I did a research because I got a degree. So the first condition for which I did research was that I got my first master's, I got my second master's, and I got my PhD. So research, by doing research, I received my degree. Can I have a shift of slide, please? Yeah. Obviously, the research gives you money, and research gives you recognition. Like I don't think Dr. Amrish Saxena would have known me if I would not have written what I kind of researched. So research gave me an experience and it gave me a recognition, and it's one of the reasons that I am talking to you today. Otherwise, I would not have met. Now, what I tell my students why you should do research, because research actually helps you explore your curiosity. So ask yourself by saying, what are the areas that I'm interested in? What kind of questions I have? Because one of the fundamental things that you have to recognize in science, or for any science, is to ask questions. So don't take anything because it is like that. Try and question whatever it is, because what if it's not right, or what is if it is fake, or what is kind of misinformation? Why is misinformation misinformation? So what is important for students to do research is to also recognize that, and a lot of times I hear this line from my students who kind of take up research dissertation, that मैंने तो सोचा नहीं था ऐसा आएगा, पर ऐसा आया. So this whole idea of what we think about others, or what we think about the world in our mind, and what the world is outside, like actually research helps you understand that. Now, why I'm saying that is because you have to understand that in one of my master's class, one of my students asked me that why is it that it is important to do research dissertation? And to be very honest, I had not thought about it as a teacher. So I went back to that by saying, let me try and understand why is it that I was made to do research as a master's student, and then what is it that we are making them do? And I realized that we are making them do so many things which we had not realized. Like research helps you manage your guides first of all, because we have that joke that if you have seen or can Google Jaspal Bhatti for that. He did episodes and episodes on how guides have to be managed doing PhD. So, or even for masters. So how do you manage your resources, your money, your family? Because when you do research, you kind of sit back and read for long hours. You have to write for long hours. So research helps you do that. So it's important for one to recognize that research can help you manage those resources. Also, what is very interesting and exciting, personally, I feel, is that research can make you ready for new answers every time. And I'm not exaggerating when I'm saying that, because just to share with you, like at about 25 years of research, I became part of one of the research, and I goofed up big time. And then I realized that it was my overconfidence about my abilities as a researcher, because I had not gone into this small little detail that research expects you to do. So research actually helps you understand anything that you are researching. And also, apart from that, actually it helps you ask questions, which is most important for a researcher to kind of do, because without that, you cannot kind of survive. And life is about exploring new questions and new answers, because like for a lot of us as teachers, the kind of world that we are in right now is not what we had expected to be in. For you, probably it's just a reality, because you are kind of online and you are again online. A lot of us, our lives are kind of shattered, as Saxena sir said. We are all working 24/7 now, which was not the reality of our lives before. So that's what research does to us. So research makes us understand, going back to our history, going back to our present, and predict for future. So that's kind of broadly for media research from my end. I kind of wish you good wishes for your future, because I'm sure research will help you understand what 5 Ws and 1 H, because I usually say that 95% of the life is around 5 W and 1 H. So if you can figure it out, who you are and why you do what you do and where you will do and when you want to do, you will be in a right place. So thank you for your actual time and attention, and you can ask me questions and we can kind of take that further, but broadly, like that's kind of end of what I wanted to talk to you. And I'll be happy to kind of remain connected. If you want to eventually do any research and you want to write to me, I would love to hear from any of you, because I feel that collaboration is the future. So that's the way we have to kind of grow. That's broadly from my end. Yeah. Want to kind of take questions, because
there is one question, ma'am.
Yes.
One student, Siddharth Kukreja, wants to know about sampling, that how to go with the research on a sample, because sometimes the results might be not correct and we take a survey with the sample. So how to work upon it to find the real conclusions. And actually, I think he is a little bit confused between the empirical research and sampling design. So, ma'am, he just wants to know about sampling and the coordination with the facts and the results.
So, so thank you, Manmeet. And Siddharth, see, what happens is that I am going to 5 people who have cars, and I go to 5 people who are without any vehicle, and I draw conclusions from both this set of people. And as you and I know, you will say people who have cars will talk about petrol prices, and people who don't have vehicles will talk about public transport. So you will say, oh, my sample is saying this. Now the fact remains that as a researcher, when you have done your review of literature, you have got the idea about what has been done in the past. It helps you understand how mobility and transportation is interconnected to vehicle ownership, suppose. So if you have not done a sampling accurately, your conclusions tend to be wrong, because you've gone to wrong set of people and asked wrong set of questions. A lot of times you may go to the right sample and may ask wrong questions, you will also still have the same problem. So in sampling, broadly, we talk about 2 broad things. there's something called probability sampling, which is random sampling. So a lot of times when I tell students about how did you do sampling, she say, "Huh, randomly, aise hi kiya." Now that randomly is not this random. Randomly means the first precondition is that I have to have a list of samples. Now, if I have a telephone directory, which is now dead, or if I have attendance register of DME school, I can kind of go back and look at those students and look at those students as representatives of Delhi, suppose, if they are, or you may have students from outside Delhi. So I have to have some list of population, as we call it. So there's a relationship between population and a sample. Now, if you have defined your population accurately, then the possibilities are that your sampling is in place. In media research, a lot of times we are not able to do random sampling because we don't have a data about how many people like XYZ serial. So what we do in media research is something that we call it multi-stage sampling. So what you can do is to kind of have an accurate sampling, what you can do is that you can employ number of levels of sampling processes so that each one stage drawbacks can be looked after by the next stage. So just to give you one example, I am doing research on, let's say OTT viewers. Now, one of the standard limitations that you and I know is that I don't have a database of OTT viewers. Obviously, ZEE5 would have, Netflix would have, but they would not give me because industries are obsessed about their data. They will not share. See, public institutions are not so obsessed, but they also don't cooperate. So now, where do I get this data from? So what I can do is, I can do first stage of sampling by asking people, do you have OTT ownership? So if I have asked a particular person that he or she has been watching OTT or not, and if that person said yes, and I took that person as sample, if I have more time and more resources, I can take up what I call geographical cluster sampling at different clusters, so that I'll get all sorts of OTT consumers. Otherwise, the possibilities are that you will get a certain kind of people who would not be representing the other people who are also there. So this is kind of little tricky with reference to sampling, especially for media research. And it's good that you recognize that the wrong sampling leads to wrong conclusions, because that's the linkage. That and what we talked about, each stage of research, each and every stage is interlinked. So and they also has to be followed up like that. So you can't say that I'll do sampling and after that I'll do my review of literature. You can't say that. That's one of the reasons it's called systematic scientific procedure, because each stage has to follow the next one. So if you have kind of read about other people's research, you will be wiser than what you were not when you have not read. So if whichever research that you are taking up, if you read other people's research, you will realize that the sampling will demand certain degree of caution. And if you follow those cautions, then your study may not have those gaps that without reading you would kind of undertake. So I hope that answers what you are asking.
Ma'am, there's a question from one of the student called Ishita Tadial. She's asking, while doing a survey, how to form the questions?
Is the same way as you are asking the question right now. One of the reasons that I would kind of always emphasize is to read other people's research, because please understand that when we are forming questionnaires, there are fundamental mistakes that a lot of us do. We have, as I said, you have a world in your mind. So if you feel that people should not smoke, the question that you will form is that smoking is bad for health. Do you smoke? Now, no smoker will tell you that they do, right? So there are a kind of in a research language, it's called double barrel question. So when you are, if you kind of Google how to form good questionnaire, you will have 10 advices there. But if you're asking me, I would give a simplest solution, that whichever sample for which you are making that question, talk to 5 people at randomly and ask those questions, what we call pilot testing or pre-testing. So if you pilot test or pre-test your questionnaire, the possibilities are that you will not create a wrong questionnaire, because you will realize yourself as a researcher that you have not asked the right question. Another thing that you can keep in mind is that if everybody's saying yes, that means there's something wrong with the question. So you can kind of put those kind of cautions. I am sure for a first time researchers, you have guides. That's one of the reasons you have guides, because for master's research you have guide, for PhD you have a guide. Why they are there is because as a person who is doing it, you are too much into it, so you don't see the problem. So you have somebody else who helps you see those problems. They kind of guide you to kind of go on a right question. So usually I would kind of suggest to her that you can show your questions to a number of people, you can show it to the sample itself, you will realize which are wrong. So that kind of helps you make right questions. And also, like some of the things that I've talked about, they might be conceptual at some stage, because that's what I said when I said that I am not looking at talking about how you should go about it, what are the stages, because all that is there. So that's information. That's not knowledge, please understand. So if you kind of pull out any book on research methodology, they will give you the answers to the questions that you are asking me. So that's not a kind of, that. Don't worry about that. Worry about why are you researching what you are researching? How better you can research this? Who are the right people to get me answers for this kind of question? So try and focus on those areas, because that will help you more long term, because that's something that is kind of more critical according to me.
Okay, ma'am, there is a question that I want to ask on behalf of the students, because there was an interaction with the students. There are certain subjects, that are loved by the students because of the innate passion towards those subjects. And there are certain subjects that students start liking eventually, but the beginning of their liking for the subject starts with the kind of job opportunities and the growth opportunities that exist in that particular area. And research is something like that. I mean, because they are being introduced with research for the first time, and I am sure that eventually they would embrace research as a way of life more than a subject. So, I mean, if you could just enlighten them with what kind of skills they need to have in order to, pursue a career in research. And in addition to the various media outlets wherein you talked about the various research opportunities, the various other kind of organizations like the corporates that have nothing to do with media, can these students be incorporated there? Can they be absorbed there? And for that, what all do they need to do?
Yeah, so thank you. See, what I have understood out of media, my interactions with media industry because as a media teacher and as a media practitioner, what I have understood is that the skills in research is not something that you need only as a researcher. Because even if you are a kind of a filmmaker, if you have an eye for research, it actually helps you, because your work will be better actually, because then you will become more what I call objective about it, because you will question what you have assumed. Because what happens with all of us as human beings is that we assume things. So what research helps you in realizing that your assumptions can be wrong, because when we deal with life, life is not based on mine and your assumptions. Life is kind of much broader kind of a concept. So the kind of research opportunities apart from a core research jobs is in terms of any other media jobs. Because what is increasingly happening, according to me, in Indian media environment, is that we look for generalists. We don't want specialists. Though we talk about it, the fact remains that as a kind of a production person, Professor Saxena is now doing teaching also, and he's doing research also, and he's doing PR also, and he's doing marketing also. So you are not doing one thing. You are supposed to understand that there is a kind of an entire world out there for media and entertainment industry, and research is encompassed in each of those fields. So you can't say that only by like corporates also need researchers, because as a corporate communication professional, you have to recognize that your in-house audience and your outside audience, and you have to recognize what they want and how they want. So in in a kind of a context, you need to realize that that research will be kind of expected there. Now, when what you rightly pointed out is that research is a way of life and research as a subject. Research as a subject demands certain degree of discipline. My understanding is that research trains you in terms of disciplining yourself, because we all want to have fun, we all want to kind of enjoy life, but you have a kind of submission to do. And then as an UG student, I'm sure you all must be fighting hard, because when undergraduate students come to my postgraduate class, the first problem that they have is to sit for a 2-hour class, because our postgraduate classes are for 2 hours. So they are used to sit for 45 minutes or 50 minutes, and they are not used to sitting for 50 minutes. So sitting for 2 hours of a class. And it's very interesting, because a lot of times they say that oh, but ye to bahut lamba hai. And then, like, once they start off in the second semester, third semester, they get used to that idea that, ma'am, because then you get into discussions, then you're questioning things, you're reading about something. So it takes longer. So you need that patience and you need that discipline. Research trains you in that. My understanding is that research helps you recognize the value of resources. Research helps you recognize it is difficult to talk to unknown people. But you have to do that as a communication professional. Actually, as a media professional, you have to do that. So as a researcher, you have to do that. So you go and meet people whom you don't know. You try and understand what is happening in their lives. So all that is kind of insights in research. So if you're asking me 1, 2, 3, 4, my understanding is that patience, discipline, training, it kind of trains you in looking at things differently, because the whole idea of kind of looking at things from a third party perspective, because a lot of times when you are obsessed about something, you only look at it like that. You don't realize that there are other ways of looking at it. So that's kind of important for one to recognize. And research trains you in that, because when you read other people writing about that, when you kind of meet people in the particular practice, like I want to research, let's say, we have had a dissertation this year about influencer marketing. So the student went around asking people, do they buy because of influencer? And it's very interesting, because initial stages when she was looking for samples and all that, she was not getting people who even recognize the word influencer, because she had a lot of people who follow a lot of people, but they didn't know that it's called influencer. So that's kind of another revelation for her, because she had assumed that everybody knows influencer marketing, and that was not the reality actually. But in the process, like, she came back, and then she has one very interesting finding that some 6 out of 10 people are buying based on influencer recommendation. And that all the marketeers, I'm sure, are excited about it. That's one of the reasons that we see a lot of influencer marketing initiatives happening. So that's a kind of a understanding that. And now, like, this particular student that I'm referring to, one of the things that I usually try and understand by at the end of this dissertation, saying, what is it that you take back? Because when you do research, you have a kind of perceptions about your study and yourself, and at the end of it, you realize that oh, I should have done it like that, and I should do this. Now, all that insights is something that gets built up because of research. So my understanding is that research trains you in terms of understanding issues beyond your own mind. So if I use the word metacognition, because it trains you in thinking about thinking. So it helps you understand how you think. So that's something which is very important for, and that's one of the reasons why masters and PhD people have to do research to get those degrees, because you should be able to think about what you think. So that's something that may sound little abstract right now, but I suppose and in our language we can use the word intrapersonal communication. So we talk to ourselves. So what is that you are talking to yourself? So research actually makes you realize that you kind of understand how you think, and that helps you understand yourself better and then the world around you better. That's kind of, I hope that I answered what you were asking.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Yeah.
I would request any student, if there is any question, to
No, sir, there is no question in the chat box, I suppose, but there is one question, of course, on students' behalf. Like many of the students these days, they are interested in doing research related to OTT platforms, maybe related to audience reception, audience perception. So, how can they start research by studying various basic theories related to audience research or audience reception, ma'am? What
Yes.
are the basic theories so that they can get the whole idea to start their project at the from the basic level?
Yes, what happens is that, like one of the debates that I have as an Indian communications researcher is that I feel that a lot of those theories are not relevant to my context. Okay, so I am one of these researchers who believes that I don't want to take that theory because so and so said it. That's one of the reasons that what Dr. Pandey was suggesting, that students find research as something very boring. Actually, it's not. It's a lot of, and I actually have succeeded in making students understand that research can be very exciting provided you are kind of interested in that particular thing. So when you are asking for OTT, you have to recognize that from smoke signals, audiences have always been there. So OTT is just a change of a platform. It's not about change of audience. So audience research is a kind of an accepted area of research in communication research. And if one goes back and looks at work done by John Fiske or look at work done by N. Young, there's an area called reception analysis. So one broad area is the audience research, other area is reception analysis, media effects theories. There are a whole bundle of theories in media effects. So what one is looking at, depending on, one can go back and read those theories. If they're not relevant to your context, you can always throw them off. According to me, it's not necessary that a theory has to be attached to it. What is important that one needs to recognize is that as Indian scholars, we are not able to make it abstract. What happens with us is, what do people watch? Why do they watch it? Do they like it or not? And we stop there. We are not able to go beyond that. And that going beyond that is more about, is it that because of the language people are watching a particular program, or is it because there is a inbuilt value in that particular program which makes me attached to that program? So then you have a concepts in anthropology, which is cultural affinity or cultural freezing. So we have to kind of actually go back and explore which will fit into what I am looking for, because there are concepts and they have been, like, of late I am researching something called ecology. So what I have realized and I feel is that media ecology as a concept is very relevant for work that I do. Now, how did I come to know that? Is because I was reading and then I realized that I'm looking for something like this. And then in the process reading, I realized that if I look at work done in media ecology, I will be able to explain my idea and my research better. So then, like, actually that there's a book that IMC is coming out called Indian Media, Ecology and Enterprise. So they approved the proposal and it will come out. So what we try doing is to look at how Indian media is not like a Western media. Like, see what happens if you talk about an American media house, is very different from Indian media house, because in India, our processes are very different comparatively. Because if you, let's say we talk about, like one of the things that I did for, I took up a research on what we call Swaminarayan. Okay, now if you're aware of Swaminarayan as a religion, it's not a religion. It's also commerce. It's also politics. It's also media ownership. It's a kind of very interesting cross-media ownership platform. It's also kind of a storytelling. So India operates very differently. So my understanding is that rather than to kind of tell my research for an American or a European, I would research for my own audiences. And my audience, I look at it by Indian media researchers. So like one of the reasons that some of the work that I wrote and then people came back to me based on what I wrote is because they found it relevant, because I am talking to them. I'm not talking to an American. And when I'm using this, I'll give you one simple example. I came across a research paper written by an Indian in an American journal talking about what we call second-hand television shops. Like you and I are familiar with TV set shops, no, where the TV sets are there and then people repair it and then buy it at a low cost because everybody wants to own up TV sets. Now this person has done a research which is an ethnographic work about TV set, and it talks about how the TV set shop is. Now I personally feel that an American wants to read about that, because then she talks about there is a dog sitting in the shop and there is a bird having a kind of done a potty on the TV, and like she has kind of done a kind of very exotic Indian Oriental way of kind of presenting it. As an Indian, if I say second-hand TV shop, I know all of you are aware of what I'm talking about, and I would not go back actually and research that. According to me, I would probably go back and research people who are buying from there rather than doing the shop itself. So how my problem will be different if my audience is different? For whom am I writing? It's also a question of, as a researcher, you're not doing research for yourself alone. You're also doing research for, as I said, for a degree. So your guide will decide what you will research. Your university will approve it. This whole bundle of people who will harass you actually in deciding and defending your work. So and why there's so many people are involved is this whole idea of perspectives, because what I say is right is not the always right. No, there are a lot of other ways of looking at the same thing. So research actually trains you in doing that. Why I'm saying reading again and again is because what I am noticing is that increasingly students feel that कि वो दो paper Google से देख लेंगे और खत्म हो जाएगा. And I also get questions like, how many ROL you want? Now there's nothing like number of ROL. You have to realize that it's an intellectual process and you have to understand and explore that particular topic. And if you get excited about that topic, if you read more, you will get excited about that topic. So that's the kind of a process that you have to recognize. Because why is it a particular film that works? Like, just think of any film that you saw and you liked it very much. Why is it that you liked it? Because the person who made it have actually recreated that particular scene in a similar way where you feel excited about that particular situation, because that person was excited about that. That's why it became so exciting. So unless you are kind of personally feel as an individual, I feel that for anything in life you have to be excited about what you are doing. Otherwise it is such a boring thing to talk about, which none of us are interested in. So why talk about it? Like, it's like that. Anyway, I suppose I answered what you were asking.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Pramod sir, any question?
No, there is no question from any student, and I also asked my question based on the interaction.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I think we have kept up to the time also, so we have managed well.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was
a lot.
A very insightful lecture, ma'am. Thank you so much. I would now request Dr. Susmita Bala, ma'am, to please conclude the session by saying few words of thanks. Ma'am, you are muted.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Actually, research is considered a difficult subject. And
I know, I understand.
and both for teachers and students. For both, this is very difficult subject. But you have made it easy, so easy. I think जितने भी स्टूडेंट्स यहाँ हैं उनको काफी इजी लगा होगा, और most of the teachers, most of the faculty wants to appear in PhD, तो उनके लिए भी बहुत इजी रहा होगा. तो क्योंकि because आपने बहुत अच्छी तरीके से इसको एक्सप्लेन किया, it's I am obliged Professor Desai for making our task easy. क्योंकि स्टूडेंट्स हैं, न्यू हैं, इनको अभी मीडिया रिसर्च जैसा फर्स्ट सेशन हुआ उसमें उनके लिए बहुत इजी हो जाएगा. तो इट्स वेरी गुड एंड इंस्पिरेशन फॉर स्टूडेंट्स, एंड थैंक यू. I hope students would be able to do some good research project. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
This was the second session for our 5 days orientation program. Tomorrow we will be having 3 sessions by eminent experts. Session 1, Core Issues of Development by Dr. Sarvesh Dutt Tripathi, University School of Mass Communication, GGS IPU. Second will be the radio program formats by Ms. Kajal Suri, Program Executive, All India Radio Delhi. And the third would be the How to Appreciate a Film by Mr. Prince Shardwal, independent filmmaker from Mumbai. So students, I hope that you have learned a lot today regarding the media research, how to conduct a media research. So with this, I thank you each and everyone to be the part of this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At Delhi Metropolitan Education DME, we have an excellent infrastructure. We have a studio for production which is known as Studio 62. It was inaugurated by Tigmanshu Dhulia, who is a noted filmmaker. And within the studio, we have so many facilities. We have a chroma setup, we have a news setup, we have a chat room setup. And since floor is splendid, we can shoot any kind of program. We also have a separate radio studio.
And we have also organized Mega Film Festival SIFI and International Conference ICANN, and received lots of films and received lots of paper in that conference.
For a college, the software is very important. In my college, the software comprises of 3 things. First is the teaching, second is the research, and third is the mentoring. With the help of these 3 softwares, we train a student in such a manner that placement is just a byproduct.
One of the essential features of Law School at DME is its well-equipped moot court. Since its inception, DME has organized several moot court competitions and workshops just to enhance the mooting skills, which have been conducted under the distinguished guidance of various luminaries from bench, bar and academics.
Judicial Training Academy is the most shining feature of Delhi Metropolitan Education, Noida. We have a huge library to help out our students with more than 15,000 books, including Halsbury's Laws of England.
DME has a very robust library infrastructure that not only caters to the curriculum needs of the students and the teachers, but also provides a great academic ambience. The library is equipped with latest books, journals and other e-resources.
At DME, we not only believe in academic excellence, but we also provide platform to students to showcase their talent through big open amphitheatre, beautiful auditorium, multi-purpose seminar hall, equipped with world-class facilities. Recently, we have conducted Cultural Fest Aloha in January 2020 and Anugunj, that is the Universal IP Fest, in February 2020.